Someone has probably told you at some point that you come across as too direct. Or nobody said it out loud and you decided it for yourself. And then you've spent years padding everything you say, softening every edge, and it's probably exhausting. And what's secretly bothering you is that you know that it isn't even working. I've helped hundreds of people navigate that thin line between being direct and sounding rude, and I want to help you navigate it too. I promise it's easier than you think if you get the basics right. Let me explain. Directness and rudeness keep getting confused, and I think it's because both of them remove something. The problem is only that each of them removes completely different thing. When you're being direct, you are taking the vagueness out. You are cutting the maybes and the sort ofs and the 9 qualifiers you added so nobody could ever pin you to a position. And when you're being rude, you're taking the empathy out. You stop talking to a human being with feelings and ego, and you start shooting verbal bullets at them. So let's look at where it actually goes wrong, because it usually is the same 3 places. Think about the last piece of direct feedback that genuinely stung. I'd put money on the words being fine. What made it sting was what was missing around them. The first thing that goes missing is the reason. When you say something like, "This section doesn't work, cut it," and then there's silence, what they feel is a jab of discomfort, maybe even shame. But when you say, "This section doesn't work because it repeats the point you already made 2 slides ago," is the exact same feedback, but now they see why you've said it. The second thing that goes missing is the respect for your feelings. Rudeness is really an attitude. It's what happens when you get so focused on being efficient that you don't care that there's a human on the other end of that sentence who has to live with your words. That's why I often tell my clients this: efficient is not always effective. And you can be completely blunt and still talk to someone like they're a person with feelings and not a broken thing in your way. And the third thing that goes missing is the way out. When you tell someone something is wrong and then you stop, you've basically handed them a problem and pushed them off a cliff. The direct people who don't come across as harsh almost always point at the next step, some direction out of it, something constructive like, "Here's what I'd change," or "Here's what better would look like." They say the hard thing, but they don't leave people standing there feeling ashamed, powerless, or alone. So the bottom line is that being direct is actually very useful if it comes with some basic reason and respect for the other person's feelings. Now, let me show you the other side of directness issue, because it's just as problematic as being rude, but it gets treated as the safe option when it's actually very harmful. I've seen people take a piece of feedback that was at its core 3 words long and wrap it up in so much bubble wrap, so many "no pressure, totally up to you, this is probably just me" disclaimers, that by the end, nobody in the meeting could tell whether that person had been criticized or complimented. And not surprisingly, they walked away feeling good about themselves and completely unchanged. That's the real cost of padding. It feels kind in the moment, but it's confusing, untruthful, and cowardly. Yes, I've said it, cowardly. So if you are guilty of padding, or beautifying as I call it, you need to ask yourself why you do it. Is it really to protect their feelings, or is it because you are avoiding having a difficult conversation? And if you are a leader, let me say this: other team members see when you do it and are very upset about it. That's because they want their leader to be fair. And when somebody's not pulling their weight or causing trouble, they want you to hold that person accountable. If you don't do it, they will have to. but they will also think that much less about you as a leader. So here is how I coach people out of the padding without turning them into someone their teams dread. Say the hard thing in one sentence, with nothing wrapped around it. Then follow it with one sentence that keeps the person and the way forward in view. That's the whole tool. 2 sentences. Remember, I told you that it's easier than you think. Okay, seriously, let me show you how to do it. First, you say, for example, this plan isn't ready. That's the first sentence, the hard one, and you leave it exactly that clear. Then you say, the strategy is right, but the timeline isn't realistic. Let's rework it. And I didn't soften that first sentence. Softening it would have ruined it. I just didn't drop it there like judgment with nowhere to go. Before we wrap up, one more thing. The exact same sentence in exactly the same tone does not cost everyone the same. This is not a delivery problem you can coach your way out of. That's a bias about who is allowed to be blunt, and it falls hardest on women and on anyone who was never the default picture of authority. If you're a woman, you know this. A lot of the time we get called aggressive or difficult for a level of directness the man in the next chair gets called decisive for. So yes, the bias is real. I know because I've experienced it too. That's why I'm not going to give you a tone tip for that because it isn't a tone problem. But I'm also not going to pretend it away because pretending isn't going to help anybody. What I will tell you is this. Clean directness gives that bias much less to grab onto. When you are brief, factual, fair, and respectful, you strip out the exact things that bias reaches for first. The too emotional, or dramatic, or difficult. You give it far less to hold on to. It doesn't make the situation fair, I know that, but it makes you a great deal harder to dismiss. So here is where I'll leave you. Being told you're too direct is not on its own a verdict on you. Treat it as feedback and check whether the reason, the respect, and the empathy and the way forward are still there when you say the hard part. When all 3 are in, what you are doing isn't rudeness, so stop worrying. You speak with a kind of clarity most people were never actually taught, and it is a large part of why senior leaders end up trusting you with more responsibility. If you recognize yourself anywhere in this, and if you want to work with me on how to be direct in a way that doesn't ruin your reputation and doesn't antagonize people, I still have available coaching spots in the second half of this year. The link to the free strategy session is below. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.